make it our business. A climate podcast that's about innovators, change makers, and entrepreneurs who are taking actions, creating solutions, and inspiring many. This podcast is supported by US Department of State, created by BBC Media Action, India.
I'm the pulse of the planet, the rhythm of life, 70% of me, and still there is strife. I tumble as rivers, I rise as the mist. Quenching your thirst, I'm the drop you can't resist. I'm ancient and timeless, I dance in the sea, yet millions go thirsty. What's wrong with this spree? So tell me, dear listener, don't let me slip away. What am I, this treasure that flows day by day? Hello, I'm Sayema and I welcome you to today's episode where we dive deep into a topic that touches every aspect of our lives: water. It's something we often take for granted, yet it's one of our most precious resources. Today we are in conversation with Professor Srinivas and the entrepreneurial duo, Snehal and Atish, founders NatureDots. Let's start this conversation with understanding the value of every drop. Thank you so much, Professor Srinivas, for joining us today on Cool It Down.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Dr. Srinivas, I will start right away by asking you this. Very often, we're very curious about certain things, and I think we need to get the answer very, very straight about this one. Urban areas are significant contributors to water wastage, whether through inefficient infrastructure or mismanagement. From your experience, what are the most pressing gaps in water usage that cities must address to prevent water shortages and reduce the impact of climate change?
Thank you, Sayema. The biggest concern and the challenge in the urban water management, which contributes to greenhouse gases, which contributes to shortages, is what we call is the leakages and the wastages in the system. Technically, we call it as non-revenue water. So typically, you take any municipality or a water utility in the country, the non-revenue water ranges from 35% to 60% and above. So it means the water we fetch from far off places, we get from hundreds of kilometers through multi-stage pumping, through building dams. We bring the water to the city and then we lose 50% of that precious resources before it reaches the customer.
That's massive.
So that's a biggest, it's massive and it's hidden. That's the unfortunate part. So I think in my view, and even as a national policy, this is one of the biggest concerns in India right now.
Professor Srinivas, if I may ask you, you very interestingly use the term non-revenue water. Can you explain a little more about this?
Yes. So the water which we bring from far off places, from rivers and canals and dams, groundwater, all of that, when we put in the system, in the pipe system to reach a consumer, the amount of water I put it into the system and the amount of water actually that gets billed, the difference is a non-revenue water. It means if I put 100 units of water in the network, I'm able to bill only 50% of that particular volume of water. Rest of the water is either lost, it's pilfered out, it's wasted out.
That's interesting. So what we call wastage of water is what you will very technically put as non-revenue water.
Yes.
Professor Srinivas, water scarcity is deeply intertwined with climate change. I want you to explain how issues like higher evaporation rates, altered precipitation, and the degradation of natural water storage systems like wetland contribute to greenhouse gas emissions.
Oh, it's a phenomenal correlation. Because of the climate impact, the temperatures are varying, it's increasing generally. So because of that, what you said, evaporation, the resources that are closer to the cities are getting evaporated fast. So what we do, we end up going further and further and further. For example, the city I come from, Bangalore, we get water from 200 kilometers away. Bangalore gets from another 200 kilometers, Chennai. All the cities, Delhi, we get water because the local resources are not protected. Local wetlands, local water bodies, local canals are not taken care of.
Right.
And the climate impact actually contributes to the massive evaporation and resulting in we going further and further. So how do you get this water? We need to bring through pumping. We have to pump this water. We have to put a lot of energy in fetching water from a very far off place to a city. So this in turn indirectly contributes to greenhouse emissions because we are putting more and more power to fetch water. So there is a very strong correlation between energy, water, and climate impact.
We often talk about carbon footprint, but could you explain the concept of the water footprint? How can people calculate and reduce their water footprint?
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. So water footprint is the water required to produce a product or a particular, it could be a vegetable or it could be a cup of coffee. What we look at the water requirement for producing 1 cup of coffee is the amount of water we put in the cup. But that's not so.
Right.
The life cycle cost of fetching that cup of coffee or bringing a kg of meat is massive. It's 100 times more because there is water going at different stages in the production cycle before it reaches the customer. And that consumption at the customer level is small, but the life cycle cost or life cycle requirement to fetch that small quantity of a product or a service involves large volumes of water for cleaning, for washing, for recycling purposes, and various other requirements. So, as we say, the water footprint of a cup of tea is almost like 30 times more than what we consume in a cup of tea.
Wow.
So that's how we calculate what is called the water footprint.
We're talking about water scarcity. We're talking about sustainability. I want to ask you, how serious is water crisis right now?
Oh yeah, so it's water crisis is a big challenge as I speak. It's not about future. It's about now. No city, barring few cities in India in particular, we do not have what we call continuous water supply, or we call it as drink from tap, except in few cities in Orissa and few cities in Maharashtra.
Interesting.
So what it means is all the 4,000 plus cities are on intermittent supply. That is, we get water supply once in 2 hours, 3 hours, because there is a water crisis. On top of it, we have water quality issues. It's not drinkable in many situations. So water crisis is a reality both in terms of quality, in terms of quantity, in terms of reliability. So I think it's something, the biggest challenge that urban areas and consumers, citizens are confronting in India right now, and globally too.
Right. You've been studying, you've been seeing, observing, documenting. Are there particular regions or communities that are more vulnerable to water scarcity due to climate change?
Oh, yeah, yes.
Especially in the context of India.
Yeah. So I would say, most of the low-income settlements are vulnerable. We call it as informal settlements, slums, ranging from 30 to 40%. They're extremely vulnerable for a couple of reasons. Number one, the quantity that is available to them is less than the standards, the hygiene standards, number one.
Okay.
The second is water is also required for hygiene and sanitation.
That's right.
It's not just for drinking purposes. So if there is a shortage of water, there is a compromise on the sanitation front, there's compromise on the hygiene front, apart from the drinking requirements. So the vulnerable population, especially the low-income population living in shanty areas, slum areas, are extremely, extremely sensitive to the water crisis that is prevailing in the country. And particularly in the coastal areas, they are much more vulnerable because of the brackish water coming into the drinking water sources and the groundwater getting contaminated. So I would say it's an intersectionality of location problem as well as generic water shortage in the country.
Right. Professor Srinivas, how do you see the future of urban water utilities evolving to meet the challenges posed by both climate change and growing urban population?
So I must say that, the crisis is a reality, but, the national government currently, they're trying to fix the problems of city water problems by incentivizing the utilities, the municipalities, by creating certain amount of fiscal incentives that if you perform well, you get additional resources. If you plug the losses, you get additional resources. So what they're trying to do is they have national schemes like Amrut 2.0, and on top of it, they're also promoting two interesting things. One is about recycling of the used water or wastewater so that the pressure on the fresh water comes down. That's number one. Second is there is another incentive scheme which is coming out, is to reduce the wastages and leakages. If a city reduces the wastages from level A to level B, they will be significantly incentivized. So I would say the problem is big, but there are efforts made, very beautiful efforts made to address some of these problems. The capacity gaps at the municipal level, at the utility level, is the biggest concern right now.
Through these talks and discussions, what we aim to do is empower ourselves and, pledging that we will do anything and everything to cool it down. I want you to tell us what small daily changes can individuals make to significantly reduce their water consumption?
Yes. So I would say, I don't want to preach by saying that, turn off the tap, we all know that, that requires a behavior change. But I think what is important to do is, in the context of startups and technology developments that are happening in the country, we are getting small gadgets, which is costing nothing. If you can fix the gadget at the outlet of the tap that we use in the bathrooms, the kitchen, the consumption drops down by 90%, but gives the same level of experience.
Wow.
It atomizes the water so that we feel the same level of pressure, same level of comfort, same level of the touch and feel. At the same time, the usage comes down. It's like a shower cap, or it's like a small gadget that can be plugged into an existing tap. So that's number one. I think we need to take a conscious decision to reduce the water, and that requires very, very minuscule investment. So that's number one, apart from the behavior change communication. The second
What
thing...
is that gadget called? If you can also tell us that, whenever people want to go and buy it, what is it?
Yeah, it's available on Amazon, if I may say, on any platform called water conservation device. So if you Google in, you will get, it's available. It's about less than 100 rupees.
Okay.
And there are multiple brands available right now. There are a lot of startups putting out in the public domain, but the awareness is very, very limited about it. Number one. The second thing I can say, that as a citizen, as a collective response, what we should do is make sure that the water that we discharge, which is the wastewater as we call, gets recycled. So often it's a regulation that every building in India should have a treatment system in situ, and then that water should be recycled. So if I can recycle water through flushing, much of the flushing requirement, we use fresh water. For sanitation requirements, we use fresh water, which is not required. Wherever there's no human contact, we can go for recycle water, which is very commercially viable, easily accessible. The technology is mature. What it requires is a collective awareness of the citizens to put these sort of infrastructure and actions in place as a collective actions. And the third thing, third thing I just like to is the rainwater harvesting. It's not always rainwater has to go inside the ground. We can harvest the water in a containment system. Again, it's very cheap. There are a lot of startups who are providing end-to-end support. They will come to our house, fix up these rainwater harvesting structures. This can be used for throughout the year because we can save the water, and then even during summer times we can use it for non-potable applications.
Right. Professor Srinivas, you've been involved in the National Urban Water Awards, recognizing excellence in water management. Now, there are a whole lot of budding entrepreneurs who are tuned in and listening to you. Can you share some standout examples of water saving practices that could be scaled or replicated across India and they become like, the entrepreneurial opportunities?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I run a water startup ecosystem where we incubate more than 150 startups in the water and wastewater management space. And there are phenomenal examples, and they're scaling up very, very fast, partly because of the water crisis that is prevailing in the country. Like what we saw in Bangalore recently, it went dry for a couple of days.
Right.
So, couple of interesting examples that we have seen which have grown very fast, these startups have grown very fast, is about the rainwater harvesting. They started small, but the demand is so much that they have grown, they have increased their turnover is more than 40 crores in Indian rupees. So it's a phenomenal growth in 2 years, so 2 to 3 years. So rainwater harvesting is catching up very well. And this rainwater harvesting structures are created from the discarded plastics, which we throw in the nalas and drains in the landfill. So that plastic is used to make it, containers which are safe. And then they're solving the problem of plastics as well as retaining the rainwater. This is one startup which is doing a phenomenal work. The second area I would say is very plug and play recycling. They can come to a house, they can come to an apartment, they can just install a gadget or a small system where the dirty water will go through and comes out as a pure water. May not be for bathing, but for flushing and for washing and car cleaning and for floor cleaning applications.
Right.
There are innumerable examples that are reaching the scale I think we can replicate.
Lovely. A huge thank you to you, Professor Srinivas, for sharing your expertise and helping us rethink how we approach water in our lives. Let's take this knowledge forward, commit to making water consciousness a part of our everyday routine. After all, the future of water is in our hands. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Today we're speaking with professionals who are in the field every day. Welcome, Snehal. Welcome, Atish. How are you doing today?
Hi, we're doing very well. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. My first question is, you've had an impressive career spanning across various roles in environmental management and technology. What initially inspired or motivated you to focus on solving the critical issue of water scarcity, and how did that lead to the creation of NatureDots? Snehal, if you can tell me about how you began, what was the inspiration and motivation like? And Atish, if you could actually tell us about the creation of NatureDots.
Yes, sure. So just for a quick background, so I've always found myself living like many other Indian citizens across some or the other water body, whether it was a river or a lake or, just beside, ocean. I grew up in Mumbai, and in Mumbai, I had a chance to look at the marine life that is there, the Chowpatty Beach and others. So I always was fascinated by the role of livelihoods that the water bodies are supporting. And I come from the state of Rajasthan. So that's a very stark difference where I initially grew up in Mumbai, and then I see Rajasthan. There they have water drought. But even then, in both this setting, water played a very crucial role in livelihoods, but also in cultural settings. So that always had me fascinated, but majorly because I was always intrigued by the marine life.
The reason and the incident, I would say, because the nature dots came into birth is one accident in Bhopal happened behind our institute called Indian Institute of Forest Management. There, gharial, which is a critically endangered species, and only I think about 120, left in the world, got entangled in a fishing net, and the same water body is used by the fish farmers for fishing, for their dependence on livelihood, for water access. Like water is common cutting across all these, and that's bring Snehal and I together in terms of for that particular, I would say, to save that gharial. Obviously, not from our hands, but we are successfully able to mobilize people to do that. And that's where we felt we have a very strong passion. And we both come from engineering background with MBA degrees. So we are very quickly able to relate that, okay, how much we really know about the water and water ecosystems and how much we know like about the lakes and rivers. They are not just, a big thing filled with water, like big tank, natural tank filled with water, but it's a live system and very complicated system, and we need a different kind of tech to understand it so that the people who are depending, the businesses who are depending, everything is really appreciate that, okay, what this natural system. And that's where we created this in the word nature dots, where the dots not only brings the sense of the technology, but also it brings when you see the landscape from the satellite, the water bodies look like dots all over the place. And that's where the nature dots, how it is connected and started working.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Since August 2019.
Very interesting too. So both of you had realized that you guys have the same concerns and same passion. And then you decided to go ahead and do something about it. But you were aware that you've got to make it into a business model. You've got to do something that will, even keep you going. So as entrepreneurs, what were the initial challenges that you faced? What was the biggest challenge that you had? And what were the little challenges that you faced in the way? And how did you deal with it? Snehal, would you want to go ahead first?
Yeah, sure. I also want to point out here, like when we were starting this venture, we were aware about, it's unlike a conventional startup. It's a super unconventional domain of, a tech startup tackling water problems. So when we introduced NatureDots, we're like, okay, so we are tackling the pain point of 2.5 million hectares of critical water bodies in India while working with communities.
That's
and
impressive.
On the top of it, sometimes to people who are not aware about this sector, water or environment and conservation, and even what little people have now started understanding, they think it's a non-profit or non-profit sort of role. But that's not the case, because our ecosystem and healthy water ecosystem has a direct economic and business outcome, not just for one user, but for a plethora of users. It's a huge domain. So we have to think about what's it one key group who's going to start definitely paying for this, who has a main pain point. And for us, freshwater fish farmers were a very direct connect, because we knew that their livelihoods and their business model is also dependent upon water being healthy. So starting with that, we sort of had an early product market fit with them. And we once we started working with them, we slowly now have upscaled to have different users with us, such as restoration managers, conservation managers, including water utilities. And that's where the role of government came. In terms of our fundraising journey, I would say one of the key challenge has been lack of understanding around water resource management at large. What kind of business models are actually required to make a water deep tech sort of a company, be able to cater to the problem that they are solving? Because in conventional system, startup space, you basically go with like, okay, this is my product, this is my customer, I'm going to focus on this. But for us, it was like, we have to work with government. Also, we also have to work with communities, and then we also have to work with businesses, because they're all interconnected.
Right.
And our tech focuses on keeping water healthy. So that has been a challenging journey. Overall, the ecosystem in climate tech or nature tech has largely been very limited. Of course, it is limited. The funding is not enough. But even as a subset, investment in water space is very limited more. So the most of the funding is towards energy tech, which should be separate from the climate tech. And when we talk about working with fish farmers, which fall under the category of aquaculture, there's a misconception that it falls under agri-tech, which it's not. It's a complete different food production system. It's a complete different ecosystem. For us, government has been super healthy here because our initial funding came from Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, through its different programs.
So, Snehal, you spoke about the expected obstacle. Atish, I want you to talk about the unexpected obstacle, which you did not anticipate, but it happened, because it'll really help, the budding entrepreneurs anticipate and get prepared and ready for it.
I think one of the major unexpected outcomes, I would say obstacle at the initial stage was, sometimes we plan based on all our practical experiences, and we shy away to consult people who are already delivering things on ground, and we try to do it ourselves. I think that is where we learn during the journey that as an entrepreneur you need to just reach out to people who have already delivered. It's not necessary that you need to talk to the other entrepreneur or a successful business person who have delivered solution in water, but somebody who is just delivering things. Then there are a lot of unknowns where we don't need to really put effort and get it. And I think we faced that obstacle at the initial first year, and that was a COVID time. So it was a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainties all around. But I think we got very good mentors at that stage, and we found that, okay, these information are very crucial. And those were like very unexpected, I would say, at that point of time, which we learned. And I would suggest other entrepreneurs definitely just to reach out to people who have been working, doing business. Overall, we found, and touch wood, there were many good people all around who are just happy to help you out when you're doing good work.
That's very interesting. I'm glad you gave that very healthy tip to all the budding entrepreneurs out there. Your work at NatureDots is a great example of how social enterprises can drive meaningful change. What role do you think social enterprises like yours will play in solving future water crises? Snehal, that's for you. And Atish, I want you to think about how can aspiring entrepreneurs actually contribute to this mission? Snehal.
Yeah. For starters, social entrepreneurship, yes, we are social entrepreneurs, enterprise ourselves. But it's important to also think that it's now there are new models coming up in tackling some of the very key world problems. For example, mainstreaming climate change issues is a risk for everyone. We need to factor that in our current markets or the current way the businesses are largely being done. So we are a disruptive force in this ecosystem because largely as a social enterprise or an environment enterprise or a nature tech, you are grappling with solving a pain point which is multidimensional in nature. So anyways, we are shaking up the way how we are constantly iterating and innovating on fly, not just in terms of product and innovation, but also how do we reach different markets. And especially, I would say social enterprises or nature positive enterprises coming out of emerging markets could be a much more disruptive force because not just in terms of tackling the environment and climate side of it, we're also grappling with social and economic complexities and then delivering and talking about the climate change issue. So they will definitely be a force to reckon with as we go forward. And they would be, I think, the next $1 trillion or a unicorn or a dragon enterprise would essentially be coming up from social or environment space because of the kind of problems. So there's a huge opportunity, and it's really crucial to know here that current businesses will have to adapt to the changing ecosystem.
Atish, if you could, in a very pointed manner, tell the entrepreneurs out there that this is what we are doing, but we are really hoping that these are the little gaps that some entrepreneurs would come and fill in or initiate their business around it?
Definitely. So, water we don't see just as a single point, and water has its own value chain. There are solutions on the problem assessment and understanding side, and there are solutions for I would say the supply side, and also the solutions at the wastewater treatment side. In terms of the volume of wastewater which is getting generated in India, I would say that is where a lot of more innovations are required, because it's still we are running very old style STPs and WTPs, and they all are like over pressure, or they are just not able to deliver. And that is an area which is also capital intensive, and that's where a different kind of approach is required. Second area where more entrepreneur needs to focus is to go beyond just to think a natural system as one product solution fit kind of thing, but more from the systemic lens. For example, the water body which we are addressing, the same water body is catering to the people for drinking water, for the irrigation, and also the fishing is happening around there. So you might need to innovate your own revenue model, come with a new revenue model. Don't try to just follow that what has been done, and don't try to get also logged by my business model is not fitting into 1 2 3 criteria. There has been a lot of innovation is required because the field is different,
Right.
and the way people perceive these things are different. So that's where I think a lot of business side also innovation is required. And one more point, being in a social entrepreneurship or climate tech or nature tech, it's not like this for the main business. And I think that perception needs to change. As a founder of a social enterprise, we are equally par and with equal confidence to any business,
Right.
whether it's doing any kind of business. So that I think assumption even is very good, and for other entrepreneurs need to keep in mind.
I think that's a great suggestion. Yes, Snehal, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to add here, something which Adarsh said, a lot of social enterprises and climate tech ventures themselves have a huge ESG, positivity. So what a lot of companies are, grappling with is to figure out the different scope emissions and all. Many startups that we have also seen and we have also learned from, we have been very conscious about it right from our beginning, humble origins, to capture each and every emission, how much emissions our own operations have and how we can neutralize that. So, which is a great way for us. It adds a multiplier for our growth. And so there's a lot of opportunity in this space, keeping those things clear right from when you're creating your venture. Also, little foreseeing is always great in this space. Opportunities are great, and there's a huge opportunity, especially if you look into just India and emerging markets. We have aging infrastructure. We need new innovations to, sort of retrofit and help address those sort of gaps that we have right now, be it pipelines, be it water treatment, be it even other solutions such as, for example, even in real estate, we now see with climate change, there has been a huge impact on the kind of traditional ways how buildings were being constructed, and now new materials are needed to withstand the same sort of climate thresholds.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. This is very interesting. I hear you. I love the part where you are saying that, humility and a passion to do something good is great. But I think entrepreneurs need to also have an attitudinal shift where they go out and, they kind of compete in the market as any other business. And that's an important point.
Yes.
We've spoken to the budding entrepreneurs, but I as an individual, Snehal, I as an individual, Atish, what can I do to contribute to the cause of water sustainability? Those little tips, Atish, 3 from you, and Snehal, 3 from you.
Definitely. I think one thing which I would say, because I love forest, I always out traveling and all. So that is where I feel like whenever you're visiting any water resources, always try to keep it as it is, like visit it, experience it, but don't disturb it. It's also a natural setting in a way.
Right.
And so controlling either those small steps matter, because collective, everyone's, even a small pouch ends up in a river, and that creates a lot of problem. Secondly, just think about, like, in a water consumption side, create some more natural surrounding around you, because natural surrounding is not just about the plants and trees. That also adds up into the water cycle, which gives more value to, in terms of the resource, for example, the fish farmers and other things which are coming towards it. So that is, I think, one of the tip I would suggest people to be just think for few seconds before wasting water or using water. So that'll just make change.
Great.
Yeah.
Snehal?
I would slightly go a little different in terms of consumption. Yeah, of course. I mean, definitely, we could incorporate few retrofittings. Like if you're building a house, just make sure you have rainwater harvesting, the taps with more efficient flows, and those sort of small design thing, which actually help save, millions of liters of water over the long course of time. Along with that, I feel what's important right now is for us to also understand about our water health, water quality, what kind of water we all are getting in our houses. It's super important for people to be cognizant of. It's no longer just about the supply of water that you're getting, but also what kind of water you're getting.
Right.
In Rajasthan, I've seen people having, high fluoride in water, a lot of other things. Once you start understanding that, I think it empowers us as a citizen to then speak up for this thing where a healthy water is a fundamental right to life for everybody. Having access to that knowledge and, building up on that's super important. So we should educate ourselves and people around us. What are the pros and cons? What are the pros? Actually, there are very less cons about keeping our water safe, healthy, even the lakes and rivers around you. And even normal, I would say, hygiene in terms of, as Adarsh mentioned, visiting places, how you're plastic dumping, or, when we throw garbage outside of a house, not in dedicated places, can actually lead to bad water, which you only at the end will consume.
I have one more point to add here.
Sure.
Is that there are certain areas where the water consumption is huge, but we as a community or as a people are just not aware. For example, if somebody is just sitting with their mobile phone, is scrolling through reels, now that has a huge water consumption and water footprint, because the data centers need a lot of water to cool down, and people are just not aware. The data centers water consumption is huge, and in this age of generative AI and AI, if we keep building many data centers, and we need millions of more data centers all around the world, how much water we really have to really, cool down these data centers. So we need to also think about the use of technology as a cautious, and as a AI company, that is like first thing we thought when we started as a water company as well.
Wow, this is this is really enlightening. I mean, I might be scrolling through the reels on beautiful lakes, but I will be drying them up. So yes, so that the dots don't vanish from the face of this earth, we need to have a very, very collective understanding and practice towards water conservation. A big thank you to our guests for sharing their hands-on experiences and wisdom. The stories remind us that no action is too small when it comes to preserving our most vital resource, that's water. Thank you so much, Snehal. Thank you so much, Adarsh, for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sure this episode of Cool It Down would have given you enough ideas for our most precious resource, water. There's a huge demand and scope to innovate and embrace climate tech and creating products that help in conservation. In our everyday lives, we need to embrace simple, doable actions like recycling wastewater at home. Use water conservation devices at home to enable mindful consumption. As individuals and as entrepreneurs, let's make it our business. So that's it for now, signing off from another episode and leaving you with loads of ideas and things to do today, but with a promise to be back with many more climate connections, business ideas, and takeaways to cool it down. Make sure you check back soon. Bye-bye.
Cool it down. Let's make it our business.